Hello. Oh my goodness. Welcome to Hello Moxie. I am so honored today to be joined by some lovely friends. We are celebrating International Women's Day early because we love women and we love to celebrate. So I thought, last weekend I was like, I want to do something fun for International Women's Day. I'm going to invite some of my friends to come on the show and we're going to mix it up and we're going to see where it goes. We're going to see where it takes us. So thank you so much, ladies, for joining me. I'm so excited. I'm joined today by my lovely friend, Nicole Hayden, Tracy Borison, and Diana Huff, all of whom have been guests on Hello Moxie. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to their amazing episodes, you've got to tune in. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, Hello Moxie. And Diana's episode is going to be published in 2 weeks. Nicole's and Tracy's have already gone live. So these are like some superstar all-star women. So I want to give them each a chance to say who they are and a little bit about them before we kick off the show, as we kick off the show. So I'm going to start with Nicole. Nicole, why don't you go, and then Tracy, and then Diana.
I didn't even think about this intro. So I'm in a really interesting point in my life. I am unemployed as of last Friday. I will actually share that story with you today. I am in marketing. I own my own marketing agency for 10 years and sold it, took a corporate job, and it is such a good time for me to be speaking on women's equality. I'll tell you that. So, yep, I am in that time of life where a chapter's closing and I get to decide what's next. So
very exciting. Awesome. Thank you, Nicole.
Yep.
Tracy.
I'm excited for this for you, Nicole. I'm excited to learn more about the journey. Yeah. I have been through a similar journey, not with the successful agency and selling it part. That sounds awesome. I'm Tracy Borison. I am known around these parts as the authenticity people. It's funny because for like a very long time, I focused every conversation around what I do. And now I'm really trying to focus on like who I am. Who I am is all about people, is all about conversation, is about discovering sparkle. It's what makes me good at marketing stuff. But it's because I am who I am. And so here I am, Tracy Borison in the room. We'll see how that goes.
Okay, you are definitely who you are. That's for sure. You like live authenticity to the core. So thanks, Tracy. All right, Miss Diana.
Well, speaking of who I am versus what I do, I am a Made in USA advocate, and I publish a blog called Keep It Made USA. It's not a side hustle. It's actually my passion project. And then to keep me in a house with paid bills and stuff, I work with smaller U.S. industrial manufacturers, and I do my team and I do custom build websites and marketing programs, which I also love. So I love both. So
yes, and Diana's a legend in the industry. She is. Yes, she is. She's been like an all-star since the early 2000s and worked with some amazing people. So Diana, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So we are here to talk about doing nothing. Yes, we're talking about doing nothing, absolutely nothing at all. So in honor of International Women's Day, I was thinking, what would be something that we could really talk about? And I think this is such an important and also misunderstood concept as women. I think we have been taught systemically for a long time that we need to lean in, we need to do more. And as women, I think we're just naturally wired to just want to go, produce, do all the things. And so I wanted to talk about that because my own personal journey has been one where I've had to kind of let go of a lot of that pressure to do more and to lean in. And I remember I was working with my executive coach, who's phenomenal. Her name is Kelly. And I was working with her. And when we were just starting working together, it must have been like 3 years ago, she and I were in a session together. And she said, Nicole, do you ever spend time just with yourself? And I was like, what do you mean doing what? Like, I was like bewildered. She's like, what if you just did nothing? Like you just sat there, no book, no screen, no stimulation, and you just sat there with yourself. What would that be like for you? And I was like, whoa, like my ADHD brain doesn't know how to handle this. So I was like, I'll take you up on that challenge. So I remember the first time I started actually practicing this stillness and just doing nothing, I was trying to have a like conversation with myself, like asking myself questions. And I felt this pressure like, oh, what do I need? What is myself trying to tell me? And I remember telling my coach that I was like, oh, I tried practicing this and I feel like I'm trying to listen to what I need and listen to my voice and nothing's happening. And she was like, well, what if that's okay that you just, nothing's happening and you're just with yourself and you pay attention to your body and what it's telling you. And it was like the start of this really beautiful journey where I really started to practice just being with myself. And I remember one time I was sitting in my hammock. So my favorite place to practice doing nothing is in my hammock outside. And I remember one day I was outside in my hammock and I had been sitting there doing nothing for a while. And I started to feel the pressure. I got to go do something. And I had this thought in my mind. It was a memory of when my daughter was maybe 6 months old. And it flashed in my mind. And I remember holding her. And I remember the overwhelming feeling of love that I had for her in that moment. And she was doing absolutely nothing. She was just in my arms and I just loved her. And in that moment in the hammock, it just like struck me. I'm like, I don't need to do anything to feel that love for myself. It's okay for me to be here. So anyway, I wanted us all to come here today and talk about what it is that you guys love to do nothing and what your experience, what you've noticed as you've tried to practice that, maybe even noticing the guilt or the pressure or the letting go. Like, tell me, what has your journey been? Who wants to go first?
Oh, I can go first because there's something coming up for me actually, because most people, I'm the type of person where people are always like, how do you do so many things? Like I'm that person, but that used to really fill up all of my time and I would feel exhausted and overwhelmed trying to do all of these things. And so this concept of do nothing for me is really more, there's more that comes on the end there in terms of do nothing I don't want to do. And so because even when I meditate, which I do, I find it very uncomfortable to just sit or just lie. I am a person who moves. I find joy in movement. And so if doing nothing is related to being in joy, like I do what I call flowing meditation, which is if my body calls for movement, I move. Because that feels more peaceful to me. And the whole exercise for me is about bringing peace back into my day. I'm sure there's a Buddhist monk somewhere who tell me I'm doing it wrong, but like that is how I do it. So it serves me. And one of the things I've been practicing very actively for the last 5 months, 6 months, almost 6 months is doing things I want to do. And so sometimes this can include things that historically we would have defined as doing them because I have to. I vacuumed the floor on the weekend because I wanted to, not because I felt like I had to, not because someone told me I should, because I felt like I wanted to do that. Do I do that consistently? Absolutely, I don't, right? But being able to listen to this in terms of like, if your mindset is that doing nothing is bad, one, like where did that story come from? Who created it? Was it you? Was it society? Yeah. Like where are you carrying that from? But also, what if we just expanded that to, I don't want to do something I don't want to do. And like, I don't want to watch TV. I hate watching TV. I feel like there's a lot of people who feel like the doing nothing exists for them in front of the TV. And that's totally fine if that's your experience of that. For me, like watching TV stresses me out. My like doing nothing, I go for a walk. I read a book. I will sit with just a hot cup of tea, but then I'm drinking a hot cup of tea, right? And so like, it's more for me about this concept of like, I'm sitting here not doing anything besides drinking a cup of tea because that's what I want to do right now. I'm going to sit here and not actively parent. I'm going to do this crossword puzzle because that's what I want to do right now. And I don't have that like internal monologue of like, I should be doing it a different way. I should be doing something else. But I am also kind of doing. So I think there's like some room to play with the definition of doing nothing.
I love the contrast between Nicole's example of literally doing nothing to yours, which is like movement and being engaged in something, but it's still really filling you up in that same way. I think that was the hard place for me to start with this was what is the definition of doing nothing? Is it literally Nicole's laying in the hammock? Or is it that, which is more of a flow movement state? By the way, I wrote something down. You said, do nothing I don't want to do. I was like, hell yes. That is like liberation that I just need tattooed on my body. So I think mine is a little bit, I so want it to be, and maybe I don't need to, thanks Tracy, like Nicole's, where I'm doing nothing and I'm okay. Maybe we evolve to that point. My struggle with that is my brain noise. And I think that's the point, right? From your coach, Nicole, is like, be with it.
Yeah.
But I love to move. I'm a runner, and chores. I love house chores because it's movement, but I don't have to think about vacuuming, right? And then there's the satisfaction that comes with it. So, I think I'm learning the do nothing. I'm in the 101 course. So my do nothing right now is reading fiction, because I shared on my podcast with you, Nicole, for 12 plus years, starting when I was 16 and I thought I was broken. I was reading self-help, anything I could digest, like fix me. So today I read a lot, listen to a lot of audiobooks while I exercise, and I am reading Harry Potter for the first time ever.
Oh my God, didn't you have a mother?
I did, but girl, that's a conversation for another time.
Oh my God.
Just fun fact, I read Harry Potter to my son when he was 3 weeks old. I started.
I started when my son was 5 or 6. And then we did all the wait in line at midnight things for the book to come out.
I wish I could go back and experience that, because I was at that age, right? With Harry growing up. So that is one of my favorite hours of my day now. And for me, like, that's, I think that qualifies as do nothing.
Oh, absolutely. Harry Potter. I loved Harry Potter. And I remember when I went to the library to get the first book, because I didn't even know what it was. I'm like, what's a Harry Potter? And I went to the library, and the children's librarian said, okay, I'm going to tell you what I tell all the children. These books get scarier as they go on. And by the 4th book, I couldn't read it at night in bed.
Oh my gosh. See, I'm on the 4th book. So like, it's just getting there. That I keep getting warned of that.
It is true. It does get, And I love the 4th book. That one is that's a win. That's a great one.
Yes.
That feels like kind of like the penultimate one before it kind of goes for real.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like the bridge between their like true childhood to their higher power wizardry. So yeah.
Oh man, who knew we'd be talking about Harry Potter? I love it.
Who knew? I love it.
Well, what do you think, Diana? What does doing nothing look like for you?
Well, it's sort of a combination of everything you all have discussed. I too love house chores, and I actually thought I can't say that because it's not doing anything. It's not doing nothing. But my favorite thing to do is turn off the computer on Friday afternoon. So I give myself a day of no computer, no work, no checking LinkedIn. And I love to this house. So I say I'm a Made in USA advocate, and my house, most of it is made in USA. And I like to take care of my house. I consider it a blessing. And so dusting, mopping the floors, cleaning up after my German Shepherd dog who leaves dirt everywhere. It all, and the reason why I say turn off my computer, it's because doing nothing for me means not having that time pressure of, oh my God, I've got this happening at 2:00. So I have 2 hours to get these 10 tasks done, go. I just remember that from when my son was younger, being what I called in the hamster wheel brain, where your brain is like, and you're like, okay, I got to do this next, and I got to do this, and I got to do this. So your whole day is packed like Tetris, right? And you have all these tasks. And so for me, doing nothing means I don't have anything pending. Like I can dust, and then I can go drink my tea and eat my toast and jam, and then go back and mop the floors, and then take a little break and go outside and play with the dog. And it feels so relaxed. And to your point, Nicole, about the voice in your head, like you have to not the voice in your head, but the voice from your inner voice. You have to let it bubble up naturally or organically. And I find that riding my bike, doing house chores, being out in the yard, weeding, or all these mundane chores, that's what makes it so I get the insights that I need, or or if I'm working on something that I'm writing, things all click into place. So that's what I use. So to me, that's doing nothing.
That's so beautiful. I love what you shared there about it's like by having the space and not having a kind of like a fixed structure that's bound, like I've got to be done by this time. It's kind of like you're opening yourself up for serendipity. Like,
Yes, exactly. Yes. And just a quick follow-up. So the snowplow knocked over my mailbox last year. And so I watched all the YouTube videos. Okay, I've got to go to Home Depot, and I bought the new post, and I'm like, okay, I got to get my tool and my extension cord. And my neighbor came over and said, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm gonna, and he's like, he was the one who installed the old post for the people who used to live here. So he just came over, pulled out the broken old one, put in the new one, find me some flat rocks. I'm like, oh, you need shims? So he put it took him 20 minutes. It would have taken me 2 hours. And I was just like, I love men. I do. I love men.
Things you didn't think you'd hear on the podcast.
Amen, right? Like men are from Mars, women are from Venus. There are some things.
Yeah, but it was just, I was open to it. And he was out there mowing his grass, and he was open. He just he got off his mower and came over and put it all in, and then he went back to mowing the grass. I'm like, oh, you just made my day.
Love that. Oh, well, Diana, I'd love to know, what do you think are some misconceptions out there about doing nothing that women may struggle with?
One, that it's a waste of time, right? Because again, if you're on that hamster wheel brain and you've got all your tasks lined up, you don't have time. You don't have time to sit down. It's a waste of time. It's not productive. And then, there's this Bible the chapter in Proverbs, the woman of valor, Proverbs 31, that explains all the things that a woman does. A good wife, who can find? She is more precious than corals. And it goes on, it lists all these things that women do, right? If you're a good wife, you arise while it is yet night and you give food to your household. It goes on and on and on. But one of the verses is, she eats not the bread of idleness. So it's all, I think you said
this has been messaging for a long time.
We've all been programmed to we have to take care of people, our families. If you have children in school, you're volunteering. If you have a business or you're working, you have all your work tasks. So we're programmed to just get things done. And like I said, it's like your schedule stacks up, and it's very hard to let it go, but you have to take care of yourself. And I think that's the biggest misconception, that taking care of yourself is somehow selfish.
Yeah, because in order for you to really take care of others, you have to learn and know how to take care of yourself. Otherwise,
Yes,
you know.
that's what my old coach used to say, that when you're on an airplane, they always tell you to put the mask on yourself first.
Yes. Oh, I think that's so true. And I mean, research shows that when you actually build in time and space to, do nothing, you're actually more creative and more productive on the other side of it. So
Right, and
for
you're
people out
better
there
able
that-
to take care of other people.
exactly.
Like your children. So then you're not grumpy.
Yes.
But I would also say, like, I feel like this is tied into this concept of what are we doing because we're supposed to do it versus
Yes.
what are we doing because we want to? Because
Right.
there's lots of times where I want to go and spend time with my son and have meaningful interactions with that. There's lots of times where I want to fold the laundry, do the dishes. There's lots of times where I want to go for a walk, right? But it's like there's this external expectation we're measuring our activities against, right?
Yes.
And if someone else thinks that walking is unproductive, then I think walking is unproductive.
And there's
And it
so
might
much
be for
online.
them.
Yeah, there's all
Yeah.
this stuff online about, those posts, those articles by Forbes, the 10 things most successful people do. And I'm like,
I've busted a whole bunch of those on my blog, by the way, if anyone's interested.
and part of me, part of me has always wanted, I'm going to blush now. Part of me has always wanted to write a post, the 10 things people do to have a normal people do when they get up in the morning. Wake up and have sex with your partner. You're like, you never see that anywhere. Like,
So true.
But how might that start your day differently?
Oh, so true. Oh man.
That is such a good isolated example though, because it's like being married, like we all are, it's like just moments like that with your spouse are just like always at least in the back of my mind, it's like the schedule is on your brain, right? And it's so sad.
yes.
Yeah.
When you
I've had to actually practice out of that in that specific scenario. Instead of thinking like, I need to do this in like 15 minutes. So it's just not lead to what we're hoping it's going to lead to.
my husband is going to be so happy I did this live stream. Like I told you guys, I'm still in 101 here.
My husband fully knows that I reveal all this stuff.
Oh, from Harry Potter to sex, who knows?
Look at that.
That's called a whole conversation, folks.
You guys, we need to talk more often. This is awesome. I'm loving it. It's so great. Oh man. We have Andrew chiming in. He says, doing nothing for me is folding laundry, believe it or not. And I'm like, geez, you want to come fold mine? That is like my least favorite chore.
Yeah, mine too.
Arthur Field. Hi, Arthur. Nice to see you. Says such a great point in a hard lesson. And we've got Leanne. Hi, Leanne. And she's just laughing, I think, at your guys' comments about so fantastic. So my gosh, you guys, we're just like, we're moving and going through this quickly. So, okay, Nicole, why do you think it's important for women to make time to do nothing?
Okay, everyone, I wrote something for you.
That was long.
And I know Tracy has a hard stop at 11:30. So if Tracy, you want to bow out at 11:30.
Okay, so to confirm, my hard stop is going to be my 6-year-old coming in here and being like, you told me we were going to be done.
Oh,
Yeah, I've got the dog sitting here who's like, you told me I'd get a walk.
So you might just see him. He's very cute and like very screen savvy. So
Nicole, I almost emailed you to be like, how much time do I have? I read it. It does take me about 4 minutes to read. The reason, so I am such I told you all, I am in my head. I am a very deep thinker. So when Nicole invited me to do this, and she told me the theme, my very deep reflective comment was, what's the why behind doing nothing as it relates to International Women's Day? So if you guys want, I'll just go off the cuff. I don't have to read.
yeah, do it.
Okay.
Do what you want.
do you? Do you want to read it?
Do you want to
If
read
you
it?
want to read it?
Well, one of my insecurities as a human, I don't know if this is, I'm sure there's lots to back up women, more so than men, but is speaking and speaking well, even though Nicole, that plush doll of you telling me how well spoken I am, I still want that.
We are making a Hello Moxie hype doll. It's happening. And you pull a string and it tells you affirmations. Anyway, Nicole, go ahead.
I'm gonna skim through this, ladies, but and gentlemen, but I just wanted to share, like, the reason why I wrote this is just because I am putting myself out there in a way that is growth for me. I'm not used to doing these sort of things, but I want to. I love it. It's a reason why I so much look up to Nicole. So for me, I am still in this stage, 101 people across the board. So I've got a perspective to share on the why to doing nothing that's quite different than the doing nothing that we've been describing, that flow state, that just being with yourself. So really what I want to share with you is the true meaning of International Women's Day. Well, doing nothing as it relates to International Women's Day. So like any person in 2025, I turn to my favorite AI tool and I ask it to give me just the summarized meaning of International Women's Day. What should women be reminded of, and what led to the formation? It's very quick. International Women's Day originated in the early 1900s amid rapid industrialization and social turbulence. It emerged from labor movements where women were fighting for better working conditions, voting rights, and equality. The first National Women's Day was observed in the U.S. on February 28, 1909. In 1910, at the International Conference of Working Women in Copenhagen, Clara Zetkin proposed the idea of an international day where women could press for their demands. Okay, so when I read this, 3 specific points, or I guess language usage, stood out to me as it relates to our conversation and the perspective I want to share. So the first one, social turbulence. Second one, fighting for better working conditions. Emphasis on the word fighting. And the third one, press for their demands. Emphasis on the words press and demand. So before I share my kind of conclusion here, to not be embarrassed by how much time I'm taking, I just wanted to share the quick backstory. I told you guys I'm unemployed, right? So I lost my job, ironically, on February 28th, now that I realized that that was the first formation of International Women's Day. I've never declared myself as a feminist, although I've always declared myself as a girl's girl. I will never be afraid to tell a woman, like, you look hot as hell. So I've always preferred to be in the company of women, aside from a few close male friends and, of course, my husband. But I think the reason why I never really got into the equality for women is that I just kept my world very small. I started my own business. I chose who I wanted to surround myself with the employees I brought on. And I worked with clients that I meshed with. And I stayed relatively local. So I didn't get out into the world a whole lot other than to travel. So I felt in my early 30s that I wasn't really going to grow unless I pushed myself to a different experience. So I took a job. I sold my agency. I took a job as a director of marketing and manufacturing company. And this is where I am just going to reference really quick because it's important. Stop me if you want.
Good.
And I'll get tea with you later, Nicole, and I'll tell you.
The floor is all yours, my friend. So
after 11 months in the corporate world, I get it. I get this day. I get the gap. I took the job to establish my voice and to grow as a leader. And I did. However, it was the most grueling inner turmoil time of my life. And I know that now because how much freer I feel now that it's over. I lived in constant turmoil with my inner voice, feeling like my voice didn't matter, and it certainly didn't matter as much as the men in the room. I constantly battled with self-worth and feeling like my contributions weren't valued. And in fact, there is truth to that because I got let go last Friday. 4 salaried people were cut, from what I understand, out of roughly 110 employees, and I was one of them. So what does that tell me? What's that story that would come to anyone's mind on their worth? But this isn't a sob story. I did cry from 1 p.m. when I got let go until 11 p.m. When I closed my eyes. I cried the entire day. I got up and I said, I'm not going to be a victim to this, and we're good. We're going to move on. So this isn't, I get it, the world of manufacturing, like that's the name of the game. And I was a new first ever marketing hire, and they need cold hard facts on return, right? So I knew the risk going in. So really, this is just a reflection of self-worth. I worked my ass off for that job. I traded quality of life, 11 hours a day, gave that job. I traded quality relationships with my husband. So yeah, Diana, that morning story with your spouse, nope, there was no room for that. So how does this tie into what we're discussing right now? The importance of doing nothing in celebration of International Women's Day. I want to get back to those 3 points that I pointed out from that blurb, and I'm almost done. The first one, social turbulence. Second one, fighting for better working conditions, emphasis on the word fighting. The third one, press for demands, the emphasis on the word press and demand. Social turbulence, still here, if not now, more than ever, in the form of division and fear. Probably at its peak, right? You can put 2 people side by side in our society. We'll give you 5 reasons why those 2 are different. They will point out the division in any 2 people, same color, same gender, no problem. So let me just bear with me. So yeah, the 11 months in turmoil, I would second guess before speaking up. Sometimes I would impulsively bring an idea that was kind of half baked to a man of higher respect in the company because I was chasing that validation. I realize now I was chasing self-worth that I didn't feel I had. And for the most time in that job, I wondered if I was just too weak for it or if I was just crazy. But I realize now I was fighting to close the gap. I was trying to close that gap without even realizing it. Of course, a gap in my skill, but a gap that exists in our society that I did not get a taste of until the past year. So what I'm considering in this perspective I want to share on doing nothing is, what if we're approaching equality in the opposite way of our innate female strengths? Not through force, not through fighting, not through demand and pressure that social causes are often pursued with, but with calmness, patience, full heart, and all the same strategies we use to keep our families feeling safe, seen, and connected. So to bring it all home here, the why behind doing nothing, I think there's 2 parts of it. There is all the things we've talked about today, just the blissful nothingness, the flow, listening to Harry Potter, vacuuming, being in our hammock. We should certainly do that, and we should, do it with complete and utter just bliss. But also, what if we did nothing every day as often as we need to, just long enough to evaluate the why behind the action we're about to take in the world of inequality, division, and fear that we live in? What if we do nothing just long enough to align our intentions and actions to try out a different approach to closing this gap? Pausing long enough to ask ourselves, is this coming from a place of fear? Am I chasing validation of my self-worth? How can I shift the action so that it gives me more power while not taking someone else's or even taking away more of my own, which is really the place that I was in. How can I take action in a way that leans into common connections rather than common divisions? So what I propose is doing nothing as often as we need to, but especially in the moments it really, really counts. I have more of it.
I feel like so called to say something here, and I actually think it's tied into Nicole's D's question for me. If I don't do preparing stuff. But like, we talk so much about doing, and we get into jobs, we have to do this to prove to that person and prove my worth and do to prove. But like, the thing I just keep thinking is like, what if we stop doing long enough to just be? And what if our beingness is the thing that proves that? So if we're trying to chase this, like proving ourselves to people, what if we would just like be ourselves?
Yes.
Right?
Queen authenticity. Yes, I feel
And
it.
even like to the point where like, hey, Nicole, you felt like writing something and you want to read it? Do you, man? Is that wrong? That's not wrong. Like,
Totally.
there's so much time, and like if we're thinking about all the time we spend doing things, how much time do we spend thinking about these things, right? They are mind gremlins that make us less productive as women, as humans in general. I have a 6-year-old son, and I'm already trying to teach him like these things. How can we pay attention to these types of things? We're like, what if our beingness was our biggest value? And what if we could identify all of the times we're not being that and look at what is causing that? Is that external pressure? Is that what society told me I'm supposed to do? Is that what my culture told me I'm supposed to do? My parents? What this information comes from a lot of places. But I will tell you guys, I've been on this journey for like the last 6 months where I have just like, forget what I do. Right? I don't even like to tell people what I do. Whether they come, I go to a networking event and people are like, what do you do? Like, let me tell you about who I be.
Yes.
Okay? I'm going to talk about this is what it is like to be in the room with Tracy Borison. You like it? Great. You don't like it? Fine. This is what it's like to be in the room with Tracy Borison. There's lots of other rooms, right? Like, go be in another room. I welcome that, right? Like, I can't fit everybody in my room. StreamYard only lets 10 people come on live. Right? But like, we don't create that framework for ourselves, and then we wait for the external world to create it for us. It's not going to do that. We have to do that for ourselves. And while like I'm a big proponent of the ideas of days, right? International Women's Day and Black History Month and these types of things. But at the end of the day, I have to stand up for my worth as a human. And my worth as a human is not different because I am a woman. It is not different because you're a different color. It is not different because you have different sexual preferences. It does that your gender is irrelevant. Like, but we have to decide that first. And if we don't decide that first, it is not going to be reflected in society. And we can't, I think as long as we're waiting for that to be reflected back at us first, our experience is always a reflection of ourselves. My coach, Molly Brown, this is something she always says, right? That what you're seeing externally is a reflection of yourself. And so what are we reflecting out into the world? And I mean, I'm at the point where I'm just like, hey man, you don't like my reflection?
Let the freak flag fly.
See you later, folks. Yeah. I'm here to do good stuff, empower people, have meaningful conversations, help people be seen. If that feels uncomfortable for you, then like, get out of my room.
Yeah, no, I love that because as soon as I said I had something to read and everyone's like, I got this time, I got this. I'm like, I'm weird. You're weird, Nicole.
No, but this is our programming.
I tell my daughters all the time, weird is wonderful because they're like, Mom,
but it's just
so
like
weird.
Yeah, it's just so beautifully how that played out because like I feel safe enough to share that with you guys. Like your response made me feel weird, but it's not because of you. It's this, right? It's a reflection of things that I've told myself that
And fun fact, you took 11 minutes. If you would have just read your thing, it would have been 4.
Oh, I'm sure.
But it's actually a really good example because we think about like, this is what I would do. What I would do would feel good for me and it would take 4 minutes. Or I can do what wouldn't feel good for me and take longer, right? Like,
Great
and we
lesson.
do this and then we run out of time and then we don't have time to be and do. But like,
Oh, that's my dog, Rocky. Nicole knows about Rocky.
Rocky, welcome to the show. My God. Great to see
Rocky
you.
is a very smart dog, and he knows like I'm standing here being quiet, so he thinks the call is done. And so why am I standing here?
there's something wrong with this. You shouldn't be being quiet.
Oh man, you guys, this is Nicole. First of all, I just want to say, first, Rocky, welcome to the show. We're so glad you're here. Nicole, I just have to say how much I admire your bravery and your honesty and everything that you shared. I love what you shared about finding common connections versus common divisions. That rings so true to me. Like, we just need so much more of that. How can we find commonality rather than focusing on the divisions? Our world needs more of that. And I think as women, we are wired for that. We are wired to find connection and to bring that together. So I love that challenge. And Tracy, like, what if our beingness is our biggest value? Like, drop the mic, man. Like,
I just want to even take the what if out of that. This is like a process for people to believe it for themselves, but this is actually true.
Yeah.
Your beingness, the way you would be, what you would do, what you would say, how you would say it is your biggest value. And every time there's something that's taking you away from that, it's actually decreasing your value. So whether that's a corporate structure, whether that's a manager relationship, whether that's your parenting, whether it's a spousal relationship, anytime that's happening is an opportunity for us to look at, why am I judging my beingness so harshly?
Yeah.
And when you start practicing this, I will promise you, once you start practicing, you will observe that when you are being yourself, it adds the most value to the room.
Yeah.
And as soon as you pay attention to that and allow that to be the data that is feeding your narrative, instead of like, look how hard I tried and then I just got laid off, I must be completely useless, right? Like, yep, we could choose that one. Or we could choose like, man, I fought for 11 months for these guys to see my value. It's just not the right room. They can't see it, right? I can't give you glasses. You have to choose to put on glasses. Right?
Yep.
Yes. So true about like, we decide first. Our experience is always a reflection of that's so true. And I think this whole doing nothing is all about cultivating that, right? Cultivating that awareness, that internal awareness.
Do nothing, be yourself.
Yes,
Exactly.
there we go.
Do nothing, be
Love
yourself. And we have a great comment from my lovely friend, Michelle. Michelle, thanks for tuning in. Okay, first of all, Michelle did my heroic public speaking class. She is fire. She gets on the stage and she has the whole room just riveted. So Michelle, thanks for tuning in. She says, the question for me is, why am I so resistant to doing nothing? As my therapist recently pointed out, I'm conditioned to make things hard. I'm not the only woman conditioned in this way. Freeing ourselves from this dogged mentality takes time, intention, and permission.
Absolutely.
That's so beautiful.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
And the permission, I think it's funny because I have this hashtag that I use on LinkedIn, permission to do you. And it's always really interesting for me. And I shared this with a lot of people, is like, at the end of the day, I don't have to give you permission. You have to give yourself permission. But I've had so many people tell me like, but you give me permission first. So then I can look for ways to give myself permission. And I think this is hugely important from the community perspective, because when you look at things like your neighborhood, your corporate work environment, these communities have not been curated by you. I call them default communities, right? They just are where they are. They're not curated by you for you. But you have the opportunity to curate your community, whether that's digital or in person or wherever, based on that. And if you fill that room with people who will give you permission, it's going to be a lot easier for you to give yourself that permission.
Yeah, that's so
it's
true.
it's
In
that
safe places.
psychological safety. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can totally vouch for that. Just Michelle, and who's, we took this heroic public speaking class together. and the safety that was created through that experience, where we felt so psychologically safe for all of us to be able to share our most vulnerable moments of our experience with each other. And that just and we only did that because they had created this place where basically you're a performer, not a critic. So everyone who comes, we're intentionally taught not to criticize or critique anybody's work. You're just there, and there's specific training they give you on how to support rather than critique. So there's that safety built in where everybody is an artist. Whatever you create has value for whatever it is. And because of that, it allows people to be really vulnerable and grow in a way that's just not possible if you don't have that safety. And you learn to give yourself permission. I mean, like you said, to just be.
Sometimes I struggle with the word vulnerability, because really, if you're safe, like, you don't even think about being vulnerable. You know what I mean? It's like, for me, I tie being vulnerable when I'm actively deciding to step out in a place that maybe it might not be safe, I guess, or the norm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm being brave and vulnerable amongst a group of people that are fearful of it. So that was just a huge component of my experience at that job. That there was absolutely no psychological safety in those rooms, and just like continuing to try to, lean into that, seeing that it wasn't there. And so that I think that word vulnerable is sometimes a trigger for me, because like with safety, are you
I'll be
really
right back.
or are you just being yourself, right? You're just being you.
Yeah.
Well, and like a lot of that is stuff we carry around though too, right? Like, I've had a lot of conversations with leaders about how they're like trying to create spaces for their people, but their people won't participate in the space. And I call it corporate trauma, right? Because we're all carrying around our own work experience, and it's not necessarily based on you. It's based on other people who have created that for me. And so I can go and I can say, like, this is a safe space, but your experience might tell you that lots of people have said that, and it's not a safe space. And so we also have to be able to give people an opportunity to prove that it could be safe. And that's where the vulnerability and the bravery comes into it, is that, like, I'm going to choose this, and I'm probably going to make some bad decisions. I'm probably going to trust some people that I shouldn't have trusted, and all of these things. But when you have that mindset going into it, and you like created, again, that permission for yourself to quote unquote fail, then you're just like, well, okay, that didn't work. What might work? What's something else I could try that could work? And at some point too, I also think it's important, because like, if you feel like you've done that for 11 months and you've bounced off a wall, then I did it for 8 years in my last corporate job. And I was like, I could do this for 8 more. I could do this for the rest of my career. Do I want to do that? Absolutely no, I don't.
Yeah.
And not because the people were bad or the company was bad or any of that. That's just my experience. And so I gotta go find a room where I can explore how I can explore. Because I've tried to explore here. I have been unsuccessful. And yes, part of that is about me. And yes, I have a substantial more amount of self-awareness now than I did 10 years ago. But that's the journey, and we're all on it, and we're all at 101. We're all constantly at 101. There's always something
so true every day. I honestly think like that's a great, like, we want to be at 101. We want to have that beginner's mindset of like always learning. There's always something, whatever room I'm in, I'm going to gain something from that experience that I don't know. So yeah. So, oh my gosh, you guys, this has been such a fantastic conversation. Tracy, we went way over. I'm sorry.
Nicholas hasn't come in yet,
it's
so
like,
we're
yeah.
good.
And Michelle said, thanks, Nicole, for this important conversation. Michelle, thanks for tuning in. This is so great. Yes, I know. Everyone here has been so amazing. So to close out our show, I asked each of you guys, in honor of Women's History Month, to just share a brief story of a woman in history, just a story from them of how they may have inspired you, and tell a quick story. So I'm going to start with mine. And then I'll let you guys all go, and then we'll close it out.
Maybe
So-
can I go second just
Oh,
in case
yeah,
Nicholas
actually,
does come in
Tracy.
and then I have to peace out.
You're so right. Why don't you go first? I'll go last. I'll close it out. You go first, and that way you can go.
So I'm just going to share like what I shared on Hello Moxie, so you guys can dive down deeper into the details in the episode if you want to. But so I have always identified as a nerd, and space is my like specific area where I nerd out, as well as Harry Potter, which we already talked about.
You would see the mug.
Yes, I have the mug. It's a Gryffindor scarf, in case
Yes,
anyone's
perfect.
wondering.
Awesome.
For context, or you're not listening, or you're only listening, not watching the video. Roberta Bondar was the first Canadian astronaut. I'm Canadian, by the way. First Canadian astronaut in space, and she just broke the ceiling for so many people in that arena. And it's actually funny because when I was young, I wanted to be an astronaut. And then I read Chris Hadfield's book, who's also another famous Canadian astronaut. And I was like, that's actually sounds terrible. And I'm glad I didn't become an astronaut. But like this concept of trailblazing is something that has always been very meaningful for me. And when I think of trailblazing, I think of like someone with a machete hacking through the forest, putting like a lot of effort. There's sweat pouring down and there's maybe no one there with you. And this is what I feel like she did specifically in her industry. And it's something that I identify as a trailblazer as well. And I have my own areas where I'm doing that. But having someone that you can look up to say like they did that, right? On those hard days where like that machete feels really heavy or this tree is like really thick and you're like, I'm never going to be able to cut this tree down. Like people did it. And if people did it, then I can do it too. And that's something that I think is so important from the storytelling perspective, and why it's so important for all of us to share our stories. Well, we might think that our story is tiny, irrelevant. I don't have something grandiose that has happened to me. I haven't had a cancer journey, or I haven't had these. I've judged my own story that way for a very long time. And never has it helped somebody to not tell the story. And so I always think if we can find those people we look up to that give us the confidence to tell our story, then we can be that person for someone else. And it just takes one. I only have to empower one other person, and it's worth me telling my story. So that's where I'm going to end for today.
That was so beautiful. I love that. Everybody's story has value. Yeah. Don't downplay the impact that your story can have on another. Yeah.
And also, I said I was going to end, but I never end. We can always talk more. But like, I also just want to tell people, like, doesn't mean you have to have a podcast, right? Like, if you want to take that and go have a podcast or a LinkedIn live show or something and like talk about that publicly or talk on stages, then cool, right? But that doesn't mean you have to do it that way. It means you can share your journey with the person at the grocery store or the coffee shop, or see the lady in the parking lot who needs help
on your blog,
groceries. Yeah, right. At your church, right? With your kids, with your spouse, right? How many people in our own families don't know what we really experienced from our own experience, right? I don't think my sisters could tell you. Nicole could probably tell you more about my experience than my sisters.
That is really that is absolutely correct. When I was married to my son's father, who's of blessed memory now, I remember sitting across from him from the kitchen table, and he had no idea what I did. I mean, Nicole introduced me as, I had this astounding previous lifetime. He had no clue what I did. Because I never talked about it.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah. And I love your point too, Diana, about, writing, for example. You don't have to use your physical voice, right? The pen has so much power. And I think about Lily Ledbetter. Like, Lily Ledbetter worked for a manufacturing company for decades, and found out through a tip-off from an anonymous person who tipped her off and told her that she had been underpaid for decades. And that person who tipped her off, think about if that person had never spoken. We don't know to this day who that person was, but because that person tipped her off, she spoke up and said, this is wrong. And it became law the Lilly Ledbetter Act, that there needs to be equal pay for equal work, regardless of your gender, would have never happened if that person hadn't have tipped her off. And I just think, like, you have an impact. You don't have to be like me. I love to be in front of a microphone. You don't need to do that to have an impact. And I think there's so many different ways that you can make an impact and share your story, and that will have an impact. So, all right. Well, thank you, Tracy. Thank you for sharing. And Diana, we'll go to you next. I want to hear about your story. I want to hear about
So she's not a woman from history. But she was in my late 20s, early 30s, I worked for a company called Precision Technical Sewing in Palo Alto, California. And it was a small woman-owned manufacturing company.
Cool.
And we made custom cloth products for military and aerospace industries. And she was also, so her name's Sally Lindsay. I believe she's still alive. She was, I think, probably 20 to 25 years older than I was. So anyway, she was a world-class sailor. Her biography in terms of sailing is amazing. And she won Yachtswoman of the Year twice. And she had in her office, she had a display that had all of her trophies. I mean, and they filled up several shelves, and there were so many. And I remember one day standing there looking at them, and I said, what's it like to know you have all of these achievements? And she said, well, let me get this right. She said, you can't rest on your past laurels. You have to go out and make new ones. And so actually, before this call, in preparation for this little bit of history, I went and looked her up. So she's about 81 years old now. She's still active in the sailing community. She's writing books. She's giving workshops. She has sailed, across the Pacific. She's done like California to Bermuda or something, Long Beach to Bermuda. I don't know. She sailed all these big races, and she's like a rock star, and she's still looked up to. And she was included into the Sailing Museum Hall of Fame in 2023. And I just, I was looking at her bio, and I thought, and to Tracy's point where she says that, we tend to downplay our own lives. I've spent a lot of time writing in my journal, like all the things that I've done over my lifetime. And it's actually quite amazing. And, I looked at her bio and I thought, I need to write a bio. I mean, my bio's like, oh yeah, I write this blog. I have a dog. But I've actually done an incredible amount of stuff, and I don't talk about it. Don't talk about it.
You have. I think of when I think of you, Diana, I think you are one of the most beautifully humble women, and don't fully I just want to celebrate you and what you get.
When my friend Rachel Cunliffe started her Fridays Pizza blog, and she didn't quite have the story right. And I said, I don't think you understand what you've achieved with this pizza community thing for the last 20 years. And, I think that's what we as women do. We just sort of downplay these wonderful things that we're doing.
Yeah, we do. And it's amazing. So, yeah. I mean, I just think about the impact that your work has had on me, Diana. And I'm just so grateful.
Well, and likewise. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. What was the name of this woman again? I want to make sure.
Her name is Sally Lindsay, Lindsay Honey, Sally Lindsay Honey. And I worked for her for 7 years. And she was really tough. I'm in manufacturing. She's why I'm in manufacturing. Everything I learned about manufacturing, that started with her. And I ran the front office. I don't know. Now that I look back on those days, when you're in it, you're like, but now that I look back all these years later, I'm like, I was very fortunate to be able to work with her.
And she was in such a male-dominated, very underrepresented.
Yes, when she won one of her Yachtswoman of the Year awards, this was a story I heard. She won at the one of the ones, I forget which one, the first or second. Ted Turner won the male version, the same year, and he said, "Women belong in the galley." And she's like, anytime. She said, "Bring your boat, we'll go for a race anytime. Bring it on."
Love that. Beautiful. Thank
I
you
just
for sharing.
I
Nicole,
just think
yes.
like, man, how could my manufacturing experience been different with a female mentor, or any sort of female leader within that organization whatsoever. So that's
Yeah, see, I
really
love manufacturing. So I'm sorry when you were talking about your experience, I was actually feeling quite pained because I've never had that experience.
yeah, it would I think it's culture related, and I don't say that in any disrespect to that company. It's just a perspective shift, on productivity versus potential and patience needed to get where you want to go. It's just a lot of reactiveness, reacting to fires, even sales being a dip and cutting, people every year. Like that's a reactive approach to it. And I don't have any ill feelings about that because that's how they've operated and they've been around for 40 years, right? So they're doing many things right. But as a deep thinker and marketer, marketing strategy builds based off of vision, and you see the shifts that need to happen, especially internally at first. Like, I think the timing was just not right for me to be in that company. Like they're just not at that place for what my role really needed to do to bring a return, at least from what I wanted to do and what I had early discussions on with. So no ill will to manufacturing, but yeah, it's probably not where I'm going to head ever again, but
Yeah, and I think sometimes, like I've learned as a business owner, it's about values, right? Like we all have different values, and it's a matter of like really getting clear on what your values are, knowing them, writing them down, and aligning yourself with, people and organizations who share your values. And then you'll find a much easier, I think. I've been on the, yeah. Well, Nicole, I'd love to hear about your woman in history.
I'm going to go quick. I'm not going to share the same woman that I shared on the podcast. I am actually going to be, I don't know, maybe a little bit cliche to call out Taylor Swift.
Love it.
National Women's Day. And the reason why I've always just so admired her is just her ability to keep growing. I mean, obviously her fame, but that's not really what I'm talking about, but just the confidence and grace she has after battling so much resistance to her being such a strong female. And really what I love about her too is obviously she's hardworking, but she plays. Like she obviously is at play and has so much joy that she brings to it. And so for me, as a very hardworking person who really sees work as an opportunity to have purpose, more purpose in my life, like I think it all comes together, your work and your personal. I don't think it's separate. If I'm going to be such a hardworking person, I want to have a good time doing it. And the other thing is like, just like, we're going to eat shit. We're going to get knocked down. But like, how can I not small-in myself to that, but rise up? And to me, like she does all of that very well. So
I love that. I love that play. That's such a great point too, to find play in what we do.
Yep.
Yeah. Beautiful. Lovely, ladies. It's been so great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for celebrating this wonderful and amazing day we get to have. I mean, we need more than one International Women's Day. I feel like every day is International Women's Day. And I'm just so grateful for your friendship and for the ways that you both inspire me and inspire the world with the work that you do every day. And to our listeners who tuned in, thank you so much. And my challenge to you all is go and do nothing. Go out into the world and do nothing and practice it. And then when you
All that
do,
coming.
yeah, share it with us on social media. Hashtag Hello Moxie doing nothing. All right. We want to see you all just
All the
celebrating.
variations of doing that.
Yes, whatever it may be.
I'll send you
So-
a picture of my clean living room.
Exactly. So thank you so much, ladies. And hang on, I'm going to stop the show. Just hang on for a second and then we'll go. So,
Okay.
all right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.